Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We'll give it just a second or two. So if you want to settle in with whatever warm beverage you've got going that helps you in the morning, that's cool. We would love to see where you are joining us from. So if you want to put it into the chat, what city you are joining us from, presumably from Riverside County, but I did have somebody from I want to say Ethiopia or some weird country. It was bananas one day. So that was kind of fun. We are happy to have you here joining us today. I see we've got Ivan and Renee, so welcome. All right, we will go ahead and start this morning. So again, welcome everybody to the Recruiting in a Post-Pandemic World webinar, sponsored today by the Riverside Workforce Development Center. We're happy to have you here this morning. My name is Tara Brennan, and I'm the events manager here at CEA. And before we start, I'll just go over a couple of quick housekeeping details with you. Your audio is muted, but we love to have your participation and feedback. So if you have any questions pertaining to the presentation or any comments, go ahead and put those into the chat box. Keisha will be able to monitor those and talk to you through that as well. If for whatever reason you have technical difficulties or you didn't receive the handouts that were sent out this morning, go ahead and put your email address also in the chat box. That's where I will be, and I'll go ahead and send those back out to you. There is going to be a very quick 30-second survey, so please do click that, fill that out. We really appreciate your feedback. We are here to provide you with the best information and experience on webinars possible, so please let us know how we're doing. So with all of that said and done, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Jason Tang. He is the Employment Services Manager for the Riverside Workforce Development Center. Jason, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tara, and good morning to all our webinar attendees. I recognize many of the names there, so we certainly appreciate everyone taking out time out of your day to join us, but we also know that you're going to gain a lot of great information from today's webinar. We are excited for these webinar series. This is the second of at least 4 webinars the California Employers Association is providing free for all of our Riverside County businesses and employers. So please let your colleagues and your other associates know about this awesome service that they're providing. We do have a couple more webinars scheduled in December of this year. There's one, and then in February of next year. So we'll be sure to get that information out to all of you and into the county business ecosystem. If you do need any workforce of assistance of any kind, whether that's recruiting employees to grow or maintain your business, helping train your current employees, or even if it's downsizing assistance, please let me know. My team is here to help you. Tara's going to share my contact information, and I hope you guys get a lot out of today's webinars, ask a lot of questions, participate as you can. We appreciate you being here. So thank you very much, Tara, and we'll give it back to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jason. I'll go ahead and put your contact information in there now, as well as at the end. And I will also put the registration links to those webinars that Jason just referred to. I'll put those in the chat at the end as well, so you'll get all kinds of great information. You do have a wonderful hotline service that Riverside County has offered you. That number I'll also put into the chat, but it is 888-201-5950. I'll let Keisha talk a little bit more about that, but it is complimentary to you. So you get to have that. You can call us as many times as possible. We're here to help you. So I didn't mean to steal Keisha's thunder, but here we go. So, without all of that said and done now, I'd like to introduce Keisha Hansen. She is one of our trainers and recruiters here at CEA. And Keisha, it is all yours.
Thank you so much, Tara. Thank you, Jason, for being here today as well. And welcome, everyone. So this topic today, I think we've had a few variations on the title. Post-COVID, pandemic, are we still in it? Are we not? But regardless of the title, it has affected recruiting forever and how we hire our candidates. So hopefully you're in the right place because maybe you're having some challenges. And as Tara mentioned, we want you to be participatory and enter any questions, and I'll ask you some questions to answer in the chat because we're all in this together. As Tara mentioned, I'm a recruiter for CEA, so I'm feeling your pain. If you're having struggles getting the right candidates, retaining your top talent, and we're all in this together. So just referring to this hotline that you have with CEA, it's an 800 number. As Tara said, it's at no cost to you. It's specifically set aside for employers in Riverside County. And when you call this number, you will directly be contacting California Employers Association, and you'll reach a specific HR advisor who can advise you on anything HR related. So Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, pick up the phone if you have a challenge or a question about minimum wage, or you have a more complex question about family leave laws, et cetera, et cetera. This is being provided to you. So we want to be able to give you peace of mind with the guidance that we give you. If you aren't familiar with CEA, we are a human resource association. We've been in business for over 80 years. We're headquartered in Sacramento, but I'm coming to you from Southern California today. And really what we do is we provide businesses throughout the state of California and increasingly states outside of California who have employees or offices in California with solutions for compliance issues, obviously training such as we are doing today, and recruiting services. So some of our business members come to us directly and need some help and guidance with hiring their employees. So it really is our goal to provide our businesses peace of mind. And today, even though it's not really touching on a compliance issue, we want to remind you that we're not lawyers, so that we give our lawyers peace of mind. This should not be relied upon as legal advice at all. If you do have any issues, we would hope that you would find an attorney within your area, and you can call that 800 number if you need a referral, because we partner with several attorneys throughout the California. So really what we're talking about today, and the main message, is recruiting has changed and it's still evolving just as the workplace is evolving. We'll talk a bit about our pain points, mine included, as we recruit and try to hire qualified candidates. And kind of share some tips. Hopefully you'll have some tips that you can share with your peers and colleagues and myself here today, and hopefully we'll provide you with some tips as well that maybe you haven't thought of. And if you did get the handouts, I just looked at the labor statistics from August, which is the most recent. And we are still experiencing the great resignation. 4.2 million Americans quit their jobs in August. And we had 10.1 million job openings. So I think in your handout, it said 11 in April. So it has decreased a little bit. I would think some of that has to do with layoffs and people just not hiring as much. And then we have had some industry increases. So in the last few months, we've seen increases in hiring for transportation, warehousing, utilities, manufacturing, and add to that, the August statistics was accommodation, so hospitality. So people are getting back out, and employers really need to hire for hospitality and food and beverage, which probably isn't too much of a surprise if you are in that industry or any of the industries I mentioned. So really the main issue that we're talking about is that recruiting has changed. And how has it changed? Well, it's kind of the candidates market these days, and it used to be the employer's market. And when we had an opening back in the day, this is even pre-pandemic, we would help a business of ours, a member of ours, with posting a job. And right away, we would get maybe 100 to 150 applications. So now the tide has turned, and we are struggling to find the candidates that we need to. So we really have to look at recruiting in a new way, really be creative, really be imaginative. And it isn't just the responsibility of, if you have a recruiter in your company, if you have HR, it's everybody's responsibility to help hire. Employers have had a time to reflect on what they're looking for with job seekers and job candidates is they're looking for someone who has good communication skills. Now, this hasn't changed that much in the years, but it's becoming more and more important as we're working differently, as we're working remotely, as we're working in a hybrid, as we're working with employees that might be working out of state. They might have the technical skills, but can they express themselves using all of those different platforms of communication? Employers are looking for problem solving. They're looking for people who, again, if they are working remotely or hybrid, that they're identifying the task maybe on their own, what they need to do, how they're going to prioritize it. Again, we all as employees and employers need to be creative in finding solutions to the issues that keep evolving as our workforce is shifting. And then also employers are looking for leadership, and not necessarily leadership positions with management or executive levels, but all employees to have those leadership skills to be able to take initiative on things, maybe lead projects or assignments on their own, and also lead themselves. And also another thing that has come up is really an emphasis on mental health. I mean, this last 3 years, we've been through an awful lot. So employers are looking for ways to provide more opportunities and more benefits to employees with their mental health challenges and issues. So before I get to this slide, I just kind of want to ask you again, looking for your participation, what are some of the reasons that you have observed maybe within your own industry or company or area in Riverside County, why employees are continuing to resign? And put your answers in the chat, and then we'll talk a little bit about the reasons here on the slide. So what are some of the reasons that you've observed people leaving? Thank you, Ivan. Yes, definitely compensation is a growing challenge, and especially being in California and with increased inflation, the cost of living, the cost of housing. So that is definitely a reason people are looking for work elsewhere. Any other? Yeah. Also, Ivan mentioned development opportunities for learning and growth. As human beings, that's just a natural inclination to want to continue to learn and grow within the companies and organizations that we work with. Flexibility, yes, absolutely. Fell in love with spending time with kids and family. Yes, people had that opportunity during the pandemic, if they were shifted to working a more remote schedule, to be with their loved ones and have that opportunity to spend time with them. Absolutely. Now, some people had the opposite feeling of that and wanted to get back into the office because that was a lot to deal with when you had kids being homeschooled and maybe your significant other also working from home. So now your peers and colleagues are your family. So people felt one of two ways, but I think in essence, most everybody that had the opportunity enjoyed that flexibility. As mentioned here. Also, it's the work environment. Employees had an opportunity during the pandemic to really evaluate their companies and organizations during a crisis, an unexpected, unprecedented crisis, and really was able to see how did leadership navigate through that crisis? Did they really take consideration of their employees when they were making critical decisions about working remotely, about working on site? What precautions were they taking? And a lot of people were able to get some insight and perspective and say, gosh, I don't know if this is a really good work environment. I don't really know if this employer is really looking out for me and really considering myself in this position. So it resulted in a lot of people leaving that work environment. Some industries had a worse impact than others, and so people who had maybe been in a certain industry for a long time thought, gosh, I don't know if I should stay in food and beverage or hospitality. Maybe I should look elsewhere before things get really bad. So just that job insecurity of can my employer withstand this ongoing crisis? And then lack of flexibility. So that's been a major impact to our workforce in general, is just people did enjoy, as mentioned in the chat, some people enjoyed having that flexibility of being able to schedule their personal lives around their work lives. So they liked working remotely, they liked not having a commute, or they liked maybe having a lesser work week. Maybe they switched to a 4-day work week, which a lot of employers are starting to do as well. And then we already mentioned lack of development and growth. And when we talk about that, a lot of times we think of professional development and growth and goals is going up the ladder, right? We want to evolve into a management position or an executive position. And employees don't necessarily want that. They want to become better in their own industry and their own careers, but they don't necessarily want to be the next manager or the next director, but they still want opportunities to strengthen in the roles that they have. So what experts are saying as a result of the pandemic is the future of recruiting is changing, and employers are looking at internal hiring. Who are those employees who stood out during the pandemic? Who were the people that were really innovative that maybe I hadn't considered before? So now as we struggle with this great resignation, maybe I need to look at my internal candidates when I'm looking at positions that I want to hire for. As super emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion has resulted during the global events of the last 3 years, and job seekers are starting to ask more and more. I've seen as a recruiter myself, people are asking about what are the initiatives that this company has in terms of recruiting a more diverse and have a more inclusive work environment, where they weren't asking this pre-pandemic. And we're the most diverse workforce that we've ever been, but we still have a lot of opportunities for growth and improvement. And not only with diversity in terms of race or ethnicity or gender, but just diversity of thought. People that come into a company or organization that can share different perspectives and have a different way of thinking on things. That can increase innovation within a company to have that diversity of thought by at least 20%. And who doesn't need a diversity of thought or innovative thinking these days? I think we all do. And then obviously, as our workforce progresses, we are more in a virtual world. So recruiting has become more of a virtual process. We've seen a huge increase in the amount of virtual interviews we do with candidates, which sometimes can be very efficient because we can get people together on a Zoom call a lot faster than we can get them in an actual building. Just the way that we're recruiting online, we're talking to people online a lot more than just picking up the phone or, again, having them come in person. So what are some of your current challenges right now in terms of recruiting? What are some of your pain points? And put it in the chat. I want to hear from you. We can commiserate together. Is everybody good? Nobody has any challenges in terms of recruiting? If that's the case, I want to hear what you're doing well. What are you doing? Okay, thank you, Ivan. Not enough applications coming through. Yes, and I mean, it has just been such a dramatic shift from those days when you wouldn't even have to think about it that much. You would just post your position and you would start getting applications right away. So it definitely, I think that is one of the #1 challenges, is how do we attract those candidates when we have so much competition with other industries also trying to attract those candidates and job seekers. So some of the ones we've heard from other businesses is not only can't I attract them, but it's really hard for my ad to stand out from the crowd. And again, maybe we've just been using the same job description that we've used for 10 years, and we're posting it on Indeed or posting it on ZipRecruiter, and that used to work okay. And now it's because we have an increase in the competition, and other employers are advertising and they're branding themselves as the best employer to come to. We have to compete. So we might want to start looking at our job postings and where we're advertising so that we can increase the candidates that come in. Follow up to increase candidate response rate. And really, when we talk about recruiting in today's market, it's really about speed, because we do have that competition, and because the job candidates are being sought out by other companies, that it's really important that we initiate contact with the candidates that we're interested in, and we follow up. And the reason that they're not following up is because they're talking to other people. So they don't have that urgency that they used to when they didn't have a lot of opportunities in terms of various companies that they were considering. For many of you, number three, many of you are not a full-time recruiter. This is not your full-time job, but recruiting takes a lot of time. And again, it's an urgency. It's of the essence to contact people, to get those interviews scheduled before someone else snags them away. So just juggling our other daily responsibilities can be challenging. Candidates are ghosting us, and we have coached and trained job seekers during times of recession, and that used to be one of their major complaints, that the employers aren't getting back to me. So now the tides have turned, and candidates are declining job offers, or they're ghosting, again, because they have multiple companies talking to them. Maybe your screening and interviewing process with the candidate is maybe not structured enough, or maybe it's failing to get them to come back to us. So we might want to look at that. Too many unsuitable candidates, and that's just always been the way, where people will apply for anything, even if they haven't had any experience at all in that position. But we still have to screen those resumes out, and that takes time. And engaging with candidates online, right? What are the best ways to reach that person? But I can gather that all of us right now, even though we're 100% attentive to this webinar, that our smartphones might be sitting pretty close by, and that's really where you're going to find that your job candidates are looking for their next roles. Even if they're employed currently, they're looking online. They're looking on their phones to see maybe what other opportunities are. So that's a really good source, is to interact online with your candidates. So we've talked about it being a candidate-driven market. Employers are now starting to focus on retention. If they've experienced a big turnover at their companies and organizations, they're like, whoa, what do we do? What do we need to do in order to retain our top talent? So we'll talk a little bit about that. We've talked about internal mobility, really talking to our employees and finding out, what do they want? What are they looking for in terms of their career? A huge increase in passive recruiting. And with that, really connecting with people within our industries, within our organizations and associations that we belong to, that can really help with passive recruiting. Talking to your connections that you have, if they have any candidates, or if they know of anybody who's looking for a new opportunity. And I'd say a dramatic increase is employers really demonstrating and sharing their employer value propositions. Job candidates, job seekers want to know, what's in it for me, right? WIIFM. What can I receive? How can I benefit from being employed at this company or organization? Versus back in the day, employers said, this is what we want, and we still do. We still have to put those requirements and preferences for our job candidates, but we also want to add why it would be a great place to work. What do we do? What are our core values? What is our mission at this company? And employers are really starting to include that and really brand themselves so that they do stand out with candidates that they're talking to. Data-driven recruitment, just like anything, we rely on data in our workforce today with all the technology, all the ways that we can gather data, and that's really starting to affect recruitment as well with our ATS systems. Systems are evolving so that we can really track how we're doing when we are receiving the applications and candidates. So as I said, speed is of the essence. When you are quick in getting a hold of your candidates, that is the competitive advantage in 2022 and beyond. And sometimes, because it was an employer's market pre-pandemic, sometimes we'd take our time with contacting people, with scheduling those interviews, with following up with candidates. Now you will lose a candidate within, if you don't hire them right away, within a few days, they will be grabbed by somebody else. So really, time is of the essence with the hiring process. So some tips that we want to kind of touch on today is really looking at that job description. As I said, if you have a job description that's by 10 years old and you haven't really updated it, and you're just posting it to Indeed or ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn, and you're not catching that many people's attention, then you really have to look at it. And again, this is a collaborative effort. So if you are the recruiter or if you are the HR person and it's a position for a department hiring manager, really collaborate on what do you want to show in that job posting. We had someone in a previous class who said that their hiring manager wanted their job description listed on Indeed, and it was 14 pages long and all of the job boards. Just a yes or no in the chat. Do you think anybody's going to look at a job description that's 14 pages long? Would you look at a job description that's 14 pages long? Yeah. Unanimous no, I would think, right? So you may have an extended job description just because based on the position that you're offering, but in the job posting where you're going to post that job, you may say additional descriptions are available during the interview process, and you're really just going to highlight what are the core skills that you're looking for, what are the preferences that you're looking for, and you're going to be really concise because we have lesser attention spans as humans these days. So we really want to get the highlights, we want to get the bullet points, and we want to get enough information that appeals to us so that we will apply. Offering flexibility, remote, hybrid work if you can. And there are companies and organizations and positions that have to be on site, that they have to be there during certain hours, but can you be flexible with that? Do you have alternative shifts that you can offer? Because if you put this on your job posting, you're going to get 7 times more candidates that show up, because that's what employees and job seekers are looking for. They're looking for that flexibility. So simply just stating it or that it's an option is going to attract more candidates. Having that compelling ad to stand out, and as I said, and I'll continue to say, we're all in this together. This is a collaborative effort. So if you have a marketing department and their job is to, promote events or your company or products or services, have them help you with creating a compelling ad to stand out and helping you with where you're going to place that or post that, including social media, which we'll talk about. Speed up that hiring process. Really convince those that are going to interview that speed is of the essence, that this is urgent, that we hang on to this candidate because this is such a top candidate. We really want to get them in right away so that we don't lose them to the competition. And then as a recruiter myself, I believe that the experience starts when you first initially contact that candidate. So we want to make it a positive experience. We want to show that candidate that we're really excited and that we're responsible, we're accountable, we're going to keep them in the loop with the process. We're going to explain if they're going to interview with 4 people, we're going to let them know ahead of time. We're going to get them the information, accurate information. All of that is forming an opinion with that job candidate as to whether they want to continue in the interview process or not. And as we mentioned, one of the one of the pain points was not getting a hold of people. And as I said, most people are right next to their smartphones. So gone is the day of just picking up the phone and calling someone. You need to call, you need to text, and you need to email. And we learned a couple of years ago the hard way that, you know, some of our emails were going into people's spam, and then we learned that we need to call and we need to text and let people know to check their spam and their junk mail and all of that stuff so that we could get a hold of them. And I actually had a hiring manager at CEA, one of our own, who was hiring a salesperson, and I guess he emailed her to schedule an interview, and she never received the email, and he was about to drop her. He's like, well, she never responded to my email, so I'm just going to move on. And we know that things happen, so you have to follow up all of those different ways, the trifecta. And I said, gosh, let me reach out to her. And I think I called or texted her, and she's like, gosh, I didn't get that email. And we ended up hiring her. So we don't want to lose out on those qualified candidates just because we assume that they weren't interested because they didn't respond to our email right away. So what is a compelling job posting these days? As I kind of touched on, we really do want to be concise, and we really want to hone in on what are the key skills that we're looking for in this position. We want to give that person a good idea of what they're going to be expected to do on the job, but we want to really say, gosh, do they need 5 years of experience, or maybe do they need 2 years of experience? Because maybe that will help you cast a wider net. People really are looking at those job skills and saying, gosh, do I qualify for all of these? And there's a survey or study that was done that said that men in general will apply for positions that they qualify for at least 60% of the skills, and females will apply for at least, if they qualify for at least 80%. So if we want to cast a wider net and appeal to a wider audience, really hone in on what are those required skills. Now, if you're, if it's a technical position, or if it's something that requires that education, of course you're going to put that on there. But sometimes we put things on there that are preferred, and we put them under required. So make sure that you're differentiating between the two. Using plain language. A lot of companies tend to use buzzwords or jargon that even the most skilled employees might not understand, and it might not attract them to the position. It might be just a communication method or an ATS or an acronym that someone's using. But if it isn't clear to the candidate, they might pass it on, right? And again, if they're looking at several potential companies, it would be easy for them to pass on if they don't really understand what the skills and requirements are. Be specific, right? Again, hone in on what you really need and what you really want, and so that it matches up when you actually have those interviews, that your job description and your job posting matches up with what the expectations are for the job. 33% of new hires end up leaving within the first 6 months of a job, because it didn't match up. What was being advertised in the interviews and on the job posting didn't match up with reality. So you want to be specific and clear on what are the expectations of this position. Be mindful of word choice. Again, if we're casting a wider net, we want to appeal to all audiences. So using gender neutral. You want to be careful with, if you're looking for sales, we really want someone assertive. That might be alienating to people. That might make them want to go elsewhere again. I mentioned separating the required and the preferred qualifications because we want to look for potential also. We want to create that opportunity for potential for people. We want to look for those soft skills. If they're really enthusiastic about this position, if they have high communication, if they have great problem solving and critical thinking skills, maybe those are going to outweigh some of the requirements that we've listed. And then, of course, we're a human resource association, so make sure all your postings comply with California and federal laws. How you're going to attract more candidates with your job posting is number one, practice pay transparency. If you want to list a pay, salary range, that is fine. But you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste a job candidate's time by not listing the pay and then getting into a conversation and then getting into an interview, and it's never been discussed. So you want to be able to, again, show the candidates if this is a position that they're really going to pursue, because candidates usually know a range of what they can afford to live off of. So they're looking for that range when they're applying for jobs. And again, you want to be competitive with the other companies and organizations that are also appealing to those candidates. Number 2, show candidates that your business is a great place to work. So what are the things that you can offer those candidates that is going to stand out? Sometimes it is the benefits, sometimes it is the company culture. If it's all of those, if it's the flexible workplace, include all of that. Include some insight into what it would feel like to work for that company. Employers are continuing to offer signing bonuses, especially for those unicorn positions that they're really struggling to find. And it's up to you to determine with your company, with your HR, what those signing bonuses might be. It's just a good faith effort that we're really interested in you. We really want to hire you, and this is what we can offer you. I already mentioned listing flexibility, a hybrid or remote work if you can. And then really creating those clear, inclusive, and high intent job postings. Job candidates want to get a sense of what it would feel like to work for your company. And it's more important than not with small businesses, because people aren't going to identify with your name as a company if you're a smaller business as they would with an Amazon or a Microsoft or a Google. So it's really important that you demonstrate what you do and who you are as a company. And then more so, telling your company's story. So whether that's on your company website, whether that's using your current employees as ambassadors to share that story, be creative. If you're in a creative industry, that's helpful. Be visually appealing. We're more visual than ever before. So if you can create a short video, 2 minutes, again, work with your marketing department, or if you have a PR department, because that gives people insight. And again, it's giving them, it's not so, they're not going in blind to an interview, they're really getting a little bit more information. Again, list the salary range and any additional benefits and perks. So this is just an example from Hilton, who is already a brand name, but they're highlighting why it would be great to work at Hilton. And we know that hospitality really got hurt during the pandemic with nobody traveling. So they're really trying to take initiative to be creative and innovative to appeal to their job candidates and job seekers. So before we move on to social media, I want to find out, and this is multiple choice, so just pick all of the platforms you are currently using to post your job advertisements. Where are you advertising? Should be coming on your screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we're tied. Maybe you guys are talking to each other. So LinkedIn, 67% of you are using LinkedIn. 67% are using Indeed. So that might be the favored job board versus ZipRecruiter and Monster. Those can get expensive. All of these can get expensive. 50% using social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The Workforce Development Board, reaching out to them. So CalJobs, yes, good. 33%. Colleges, 33%. Those I just am curious. Those that are reaching out to colleges, are you getting response from the advertisements? Because I've used the colleges, the handshake, and I've never gotten a response from any candidates. So maybe you're going to job fairs as well at colleges. But Handshake has not worked for me. One I will promote is Craigslist. We actually continue to use Craigslist because it works for a certain area. No, sorry, I thought I was sharing with y'all. Craigslist, none of you put that you used it, but when we advertise, I have a member here in Long Beach, and we advertised for them over Craigslist, and we got a good response because people are looking on Craigslist for certain specific areas. Yeah, I know. Craigslist got a bad reputation, but it's not expensive. Depending on the area, I think Long Beach was maybe $40 for 30 days. So it was pretty big. And I think we got at least 5 to 6 candidates that were qualified candidates for an office manager position for a medical environment. So don't pass it up, especially if you're restricted on your budget. That can help you. Craigslist can help. But of course, social media, we can utilize that to our advantage. Of course, some of these we do have to pay for if we do a structured job posting, but a lot of this is sharing information, right? And when we have a job posting for one of our business members, we will share that job posting with all of our colleagues at CEA, who will then put it on their LinkedIn, who will then share it with, their exponential number of connections that they have on LinkedIn. So it's really been effective for us in reaching people. And I've really noticed more of a collaboration between recruiters and employers, actually having like job seeker day or employer day. Well, recruiters will post jobs for employers, so it will get out to job candidates and seekers. So it's just about getting out there and using those platforms. People are already on those platforms. They're already going to their Instagram, they're already going to their Facebook and Twitter, but it's knowing what's right for your organization. You don't have to use all of them, but it can save you time and money. And of course, it can expand your job reach. And if you are, especially if you are able to offer remote work, it's going to reach those people out of state, wherever they are on social media. So I know a few years ago, the brand Oakley did a Twitter job fair, and it was only for their followers. So they only posted it on Twitter, and they did a job fair here in Southern California at the beach in San Clemente. And they posted it on Twitter because they knew their followers were already interested in their company. So they were looking for those candidates. But if you didn't follow that company, you weren't going to find out about that job fair. So that was kind of a creative way of getting job candidates. And then the next thing to talk about is the recruiting process. So if you haven't reevaluated your recruiting process, and as we said, it's time consuming, maybe it was a little just we used to wing it, and now we really need a process at our company. And is it followed by everyone? So do you have, do you post to certain areas? Do you need to post to more? If you're not posting to social media, would highly recommend it. As I said, if you can get other people involved, such as marketing, to make sure that it reaches a good audience. But knowing, having a process in place will really help the candidate experience, because you want it to be structured so that you know what each step involves. So make sure that you are, if you aren't currently following a methodical, organized process, what it means when we're actually looking at the job description, where are we going to post it, who's screening the resumes, who's contacting for initial interviews, how are we processing those resumes, where are we keeping them, and then with the following interviews, are we scheduling those on Zoom, are we scheduling them in person, are we getting people in time? So maybe just really looking at, is there anywhere in the process that we could improve upon, that we could implement something new with the new way that we're working? And really, again, encouraging and emphasizing to those hiring managers that time is of the essence. We really need to get on the ball with this. And as I said, it really starts from the initial contact with the job candidate in terms of that experience and the insights they're getting from your company as they go through the interviewing process. So number one, you want to be on time, whether you're on a Zoom call, whether you're in person. You want to be on time because you're showing that you value that job candidate's time. You want to be prepared and organized. You did receive the resume ahead of time. So just highlight areas of the resume. Don't use that interview time, which is so crucial of a time to get to know that candidate by looking through the resume. So be prepared and organized. I think once years ago, not at CEA where I currently work, but it was a retail environment, and the director of security would intentionally make the candidates wait 40 minutes before they interviewed them. And I just thought that was such a lack of respect on that person's part. It wasn't because they had other things to do. And of course, you know, we're all human. We might get tied up in meetings, but being on time really it sends a message back and forth, right? If the candidate's on time, we expect that. If the employer is on time, the candidate expects that as well. Have relevant questions to ask during the interview. We at CEA use a questionnaire that we develop, and we use those questions that we ask during the initial interviews with every single applicant to make sure that we're consistent and fair. Ask those behavioral based questions, right? Because our past behavior can be a precursor for what the future behavior is going to look like. So asking people about incidents or scenarios that have happened in their previous work environments, with communication, with treating customers, and really treat candidates like customers. Again, I can't emphasize enough, you have so much competition out there that you really want to make this a positive experience for the candidates so they continue, so they don't ghost you, so that you are relevant to them, and they are thinking, gosh, that recruiter at CEA was really attentive and really communicated well with me. That really gives me insight into how the company works. We recommend listening 90% and talking 10%. You really are wanting to get as much information from that job seeker as possible. And that might be a challenge for some of your hiring managers. There are people who are long talkers and want to talk about, especially in their higher levels, maybe they're a founder of the company or organization, and they want to kind of brag about it and they want to give you insights, but this isn't the time to do that. This is the time during interviews to listen. I had one gal, she worked for a construction company, who said that one of the hiring managers scheduled an interview with a job seeker it was supposed to be 1 to 2 hours, and he ended up talking to that candidate for 4 hours. He would not let that candidate go. So I don't think that candidate accepted that job, but we really want to listen. We don't want to talk. I really feel it's important to put a candidate at ease and welcome. We're not all experts at interviewing, and maybe we haven't interviewed in about 5 years, or it just doesn't come natural to us. So we want to be able to put the candidate at ease so that they can answer the questions properly. So just really smiling, making them feel comfortable, whether it's on Zoom or not. Engaging in very little chit chat, because you want to be careful about the questions you ask your candidates in terms of personal information, but just having that, hope everything's okay, hope you're having a good day, really making them feel at ease so that they can share and be more forthcoming with the information. Obviously, sharing your job description, they should have it. You can refer to it during the interview. Involving others on your team that might be at higher levels of the interview, but just so that everybody can get a perspective on the candidate, because we could tend to have a bias about people, and so we need others to give us input as well. Giving the candidate time to answer questions. And as a society, we like to fill the silence gap. We think it's uncomfortable. We think it's awkward. So we'll start talking when maybe a candidate just needs time. If you haven't given them the questions ahead of time, and actually some companies are starting to do that, to give candidates a little heads up that these are some of the questions that might come your way. But if it's a surprise question, and maybe it's a little complex, or maybe it's referring to a time that passed a while ago, give them that silence, give them that time to gather their thoughts, and really come up with that answer. And then, of course, being prepared to answer any questions they may have. So based on those tips, maybe it is time to reshuffle the interview process a little bit, because again, it's more important than ever to create that positive candidate experience. So whether that means, standardizing your interview questions, training hiring managers to interview, just as job seekers and employees, we might not be experts at interviewing. Hiring managers might not be experts at interviewing. So we want to give them some tools and resources that they can use to stay on track during the interview. Making sure you highlight the company culture and brand, and making sure that everybody who's involved in the interviewing process is highlighting the same company culture and brand. You don't want to confuse the job candidate and mix and confuse them by saying different things, right? You really want to make sure everything's matching up. And I always say hire for potential, not experience. Of course, there are certain positions and roles that might require a minimum of experience. But if someone is required for 5 years experience and maybe they have 3 years experience, but they have so much potential and they're so enthusiastic and they're displaying so much energy and interest in your company, consider them, right? Really consider them as that potential for that next role. And as we are in a digital world, our job seekers and job candidates have access online to finding out some questions to ask in response. When interviewers say, do you have any questions at the end? Job coaches will always tell job candidates and job seekers to come up with some questions. So job seekers are coming up with some pretty thoughtful questions to, again, gain insight on what it will be like working for this company. So some of these questions might include, what's the biggest opportunity for this role? What's the most challenging aspect of it? I've heard people ask, why do you stay here in this position? So just really, doing your own homework, that these could be questions that candidates potentially ask you and that you want to be able to respond thoughtfully as well. So again, one of the things that employers are doing, especially those that are incurring a lot of turnover, is, gosh, how do we keep our best employees? How do we keep them from leaving? And I think I like this survey because it's employers need to recognize that our needs and desires have shifted due to the pandemic. And along with that, our tenure at a workplace has shifted dramatically over the years. And I think about my parents and even some of the businesses I work with, and maybe you that have worked maybe 15, 20 years for one company, and that has shifted. Employees don't stay where they don't feel valued or appreciated anymore. And pre-pandemic, the average tenure was 5 years. And one study showed post-pandemic, if we are in a post-pandemic, I hope so, or we're getting there, the average tenure is 1.8 years. So keep that in mind, because we do have a tendency with hiring managers and when we're considering resumes to look at the length of employment and say, oh gosh, they were only there 1.8 years or they were only there 2 years. And that's just a trend, again, with employees saying, if I'm not getting all the things that we pointed out at the beginning, learning and growth, professional development, healthy, positive work culture, compensation that can sustain the cost of living where I live, all of those things, then they're going to move on. So something to think about when you're looking at those resumes, that tenure has shifted a lot over the last 5 years, and even dramatically because of the pandemic. Kind of surprising, but at the same time, not surprising. And the cost of hiring new employees, the average business can expect to spend upwards of $4,000 for new each employee, according to SHRM, and this was in 2021. So employers who haven't incurred that turnover are saying, gosh, I could invest that money. I can invest that potential money in my employees to promote professional development, to look at my compensation and consider whether I need to provide an increase at this time. So that is a lot of money. And if experiencing a lot of turnover, that just multiplies. So additional pain points when we are struggling to hire those employees, when we have experienced turnover, is, you know, some of the recruitment fees. The job postings are really increasing on job boards such as Indeed, such as ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn. Also, if we do go to recruiting agencies or staffing agencies, those are expensive as well, or can be. They can also be worthwhile if we don't have the time to dedicate to getting these candidates in a timely manner. That is their job. If you have a recruiter at your company, or if you are a recruiter and that is what you only do, you might have more time. But for those of you who are doing this temporarily, just because you have an opening, it might be worthwhile to look at a staffing agency or recruiting agency. Then we have staff time. When we're understaffed, our staff is doing more, right? They're doing more and maybe having less time to do their primary responsibilities. A relocation cost. Now, if you offer, could be a pro for remote work, because you don't have to incur relocation costs. Every new employee is going to need some kind of training, and a lot of hiring managers expect that person to come on the job day one and know everything, especially if they have experience in a different company with that position. So they are going to say, no, I'm just going to bring them on and we're not going to have to train them. Well, you have a different computer system, you have a different process for doing things. So yes, all employees are going to need training. So there will be training expenses incurred. How does it affect? Oh, that's a good question. Is it Joanne? How do we measure that decision, job hopper versus unfulfilled employee? Well, I mean, one thing is when you're in the interview process, you're going to ask that person specifically why they left that previous employment. And if you do create that, comfortable environment, they'll usually tell you, you know, and I remember years ago when we did coach our job seekers, we said, you know, you don't want to give too much negative information about your previous employment. But if there is a work culture and that is increasingly becoming a valid reason for leaving the company, it wasn't a healthy work environment, that doesn't mean you have to rat out your negative boss, right? And say, oh, they were horrible, this and this and that. But just saying it was an unhealthy work environment for me. It became exceedingly unstable. Things like that are valid reasons, but you can usually pick up on reasons if someone's just like, well, I didn't get this certain compensation, or, you know, just wasn't going anywhere. Yeah, but it's a tricky process, but definitely really trying to get insight if they are consistently only 1.8 years here or there. There could be other reasons that I think someone mentioned in the chat earlier. Maybe they were taking time to care for a loved one, a family member. Maybe they were working on pursuing additional education, so took a time off. So some of those things might be valid reasons. Yeah, so think about the impact that it has on the team who's trying to make up for the lack of employees, the disruption that can cause to projects. They might be incomplete, the loss of customers. I mean, I've in the last 6 months, I've gone to different food and beverage locations where they were closed. Starbucks of mine was closed because they just didn't have enough employees to work the inside. They still had the drive-through, but they didn't have the inside access. So you might lose a few customers because you want that access as a client. And then, of course, that can affect your brand if you're unable to compete when you're experiencing high volumes of turnover. So when we think of retaining our top employees, what do our employees want today at work? Well, most employees want a people-first culture. And throw in the chat what you think that means, a people-first culture. And when I was talking about that opportunity to really gain insight in their employers during the pandemic, employees were really looking at, gosh, is my employer taking care of me? Are they really considering, my welfare, my well-being when they're making these decisions, and my engagement? And if it's going to increase my engagement on the job, if it's going to decrease, and are they just looking out for me? So that's what I think people first culture means. It means the employer is really considering the well-being of their employees first and foremost, because when you treat your employees well, they'll do the rest, right? We all want to be in an environment where we feel included, where we feel valued, where we feel appreciated, recognized for our contributions. Gallup, the organization that studies employee engagement, says highly engaged employees are recognized for their efforts at least once every 7 days. And that could be just a thank you. It doesn't have to have a monetary, doesn't have to be a gift card. It's just a genuine thank you acknowledgement for your contribution to the company or organization. Emotional intelligence means that I'm working in an environment where people are self-aware. They're aware of how they treat people. They're aware of how they're perceived by others. They're aware of what they do well, their strengths, and what they can contribute, and where they might need help and where they might need assistance from others in order to get to the levels that they want to, and just really monitoring our emotions, right? Because it used to be back in the day, leave your emotions at the door, or at least leave your personal life at the door. And we know that they intersect, right? Our emotions come into work all of the time. So are we able to monitor those emotions, and when we acknowledge or observe what our triggers are emotionally? Employees are looking for purpose, and purpose can mean many different things for each individual, but knowing that I contribute to the organization and company that I'm working for, and that the company acknowledges that and they value that and they express how I am contributing to that overall purpose. A commitment to health and well-being, we've talked about that, but that's what's pretty much led to the flexibility of work, to the remote work, to the hybrid, because people have increasingly become burnt out at work. So we want to be able to address those issues and really commit to providing the health and well-being resources that our employees need. We talked about diversity and inclusion. It's still very important. And professional development and growth. And as I mentioned, professional development and growth means I'm continuing to learn new and acquire new skills within my profession. And I may want to be promoted to a higher level position or a manager position, but maybe I just want to continue to learn and grow within this industry or within my skills. So that leads us to say, maybe we need to rethink our work culture, right? Are we providing those things to employees that are very important, that have been studied, that have been researched over the years? The one is just feeling appreciated at work. Anybody here in the chat, you can answer yes or no. Overappreciated, over-recognized. I can't take another compliment. I can't take another thank you, Keisha. I'm there, I'm good. So let me know if you're overappreciated, you're over-recognized, you're overvalued. I ask this question a lot just to kind of gauge and answer, and most people say no. So we can always do better at recognizing and valuing our employees' work. Considering remote or hybrid work, if it has been successful for your company or organization, and we work with members from all industries within California and even outside of California, and some of them don't have that opportunity. It may be a manufacturing company where those employees can't take all the manufacturing to their homes and do the work at home, but can you offer flexibility in terms of the schedule? Is it necessary to have a 9-to-5 schedule, or can you have a couple different shifts, or can you implement maybe a 4-day work week? We just started doing that at CEA, and it's still an experiment, but we have every other Friday off. And I know I value it, and I know Tara values it, and we're hoping it's successful because we want it to continue. So just rethinking things. It doesn't have to necessarily stay in that 9-to-5 regimen that was started during the Industrial Revolution, right? So things are shifting. Our work culture is shifting. Are we shifting with it? And then compensation and benefits, of course, is very important to job seekers. This was just a study in January that said 62% said that benefits are more important to them than before the pandemic. 79% of job seekers think they can make more money by switching to a new job, and 80% believe that employers need to reevaluate the benefits that they offer after the pandemic. So knowing, maybe that's a conversation that your company needs to have, and maybe you start by doing a compensation or benefits survey and seeing where people are at, because everybody is different, right? Every company is different, every industry is different, so people might want and need different things. And again, we talked about mental health and well-being. I know, again, we're a small business at CEA, but our CEO implemented a well-being stipend, really, and provides us a certain amount of money to do something for our own mental health and well-being, whether it's buying new tennis shoes or buying a paddleboard so we can go out on the ocean on the weekend. And it's not a huge amount, but it's enough where it's like, wow, my employer really cares about me. They want me to invest in my mental health and well-being. So I know there's a lot of small businesses out there. It's really the good faith effort, right? We know we can't do a lot maybe at this point in time, but we're going to do something because we know that it matters to you. Anything that you can do to help promote that you are considerate of your employees and that you care about their mental health and well-being. And then I talked about the compensation and benefit surveys, but you can also utilize stay interviews when you're kind of gauging whether people are engaged or they are thinking of leaving. We usually conduct those when people are leaving, when they've already submitted their resignation notice, and then it's too late, right? So consider a stay interview where you gather some feedback from current employees. Again, it could be a small survey, it could just be a one-on-one with key employees of what's going on. But the two things you're doing with that is you're help mitigating any risk by uncovering some situations that could lead to potential incidents of harassment or discrimination. You're also gathering feedback on what you can do, what opportunities there are for you as an employer to change things, to turn things around for those employees. And maybe they might be very simple, or maybe they're a little bit more complex. So highly recommend utilizing stay interviews to check in with people and see how they're doing. It can shift dramatically, right? We've had such a topsy-turvy, unprecedented 3 years. So your top talent, your top performers might be going through something. They might be going through something at work that has shifted the way they do work. So we want to find out, we want to know so that we can turn it around. It really shows that we're interested, that we're invested in our employees. And then possible questions for the stay interview could be, are you continuing to learn here, or what are you learning? Why do you continue to stay with the company? When was the last time you thought about leaving? What can I do to make your experience at work better for you? And again, some of these might seem kind of, wow, that's intense. But if you build that foundation of trust and respect with your employees, then they're going to share it with you. They're going to, if you create a safe space for them to really express their opinions and ideas about things, they will share with you. If you don't have that foundation of trust and respect, it might be harder to gain the answers with those questions. So start doing those check-ins, one-on-ones. And we know you're going to hire those right people. If you have some job openings right now and you're looking for those great candidates, we know you're going to find them. Let us know also in the chat. Let us know what positions you're hiring for, or if you have a link, put it in. We're in this together. So if I know someone, if Tara knows someone, if your colleagues on the webinar today know of someone, go ahead and put it in the chat. That's how we start networking and connecting. We want you to be able to start find the right people. But as I said, that statistic, 33% of new hires quit within the first 6 months. It's usually due to the fact that they didn't have clear expectations of the job, that it didn't match up with what was advertised during the interview. And I know I've had that experience in previous roles that I've had before. Hopefully you haven't had that experience, but it was like night and day. This is what was told to me and this is what happened. And that, Jovan, goes back to asking people about that lack of tenure. Maybe something happened in the interview process and the employer was advertising one thing, and then when they got to the job, it was a whole different situation. And that happens. It really does. So you have to be transparent with your expectations and what you want from candidates. So we want to create that positive onboarding experience. We really want to have some structure in place. We don't want to wing it. I have asked this question so many times with people in trainings and webinars. Have you ever had a job where they just basically gave you your new hire paperwork and said good luck? And a majority of people have had that experience at some point. And it's really defeating, deflating, confusing, not to know what is expected of me at work and knowing that I'm not going to get the support that I need. So with onboarding, have a process in place, any kind of pre-boarding that you can do with new hires so that you can really concentrate. If the employee is coming into your work environment on day one, that first week is going to be a lot of information, a lot of news, right? A lot of new things, new experiences, new people. So really creating a system so that it isn't overwhelming and that they're not retaining the information that they're given. So a lot of employers have mentoring programs where either it's maybe somebody within their department who has been there several years who can be a peer mentor, or whether it's the manager, hopefully the manager themselves is mentoring that new employee, and communicating expectations early on with your employee so that they have an idea of what they're going to be doing on their job. And then scheduling get to know you meetings with key staff. I think we've hired maybe 4 people in the last 3 years. Tara, I don't know if that's right, but we all work remotely. So the only way they get to know us is by creating a Zoom meeting. So each department, when we have a new hire, the new employee goes to each departmental meeting, even if they're not going to be interacting with them on a daily basis or a regular basis, just so they know what that department does. So they get more of an insight of the flow of the work process and the company and organization, because we all know that that can differ dramatically from company to company. And then what you really want to focus on is answering these 5 questions for employees during their onboarding process. What is our mission? What do we believe in around here? So really emphasizing, this is our purpose, this is our mission, these are our core values, this is what you can expect from us as a company and an organization. Again, you want that to match with what you said in the interview to actually what they're experiencing in real time. And sometimes those don't match up. Number 2, for the employee, what are my strengths? What are the strengths that I have? And that's going to be assessed during that onboarding process, right? Because the candidate also told you their strengths, but we really want to see those strengths come out. And you might see a varied amount of strengths that they can contribute. So they really want to know, what am I contributing? Which of my strengths are really going to work in this role? Sometimes we take on jobs that don't utilize our strengths. And that's when it's really fast for us to become disengaged. Years ago, I took on a sales position, and I am not competitive, and I'm not, it just was not working to my strengths, and I did not do well on that job, and we ended up parting ways. So we really always want to find people for the roles that these are their strengths. These are what they do well. And number 3, what is my role? So they have a real clear indication of what their role is within the department, within the team, within the organization, and that can be developed over time, but you're going to give them a clear idea during that onboarding process. Who are my partners? Number 4, who am I going to work with on a daily basis? Who am I interdependent on? Which departments am I going to work with, or what vendors or what subcontractors am I working with and interacting with? Clients, customers. And number 5, what does my future here look like? So if we go back to the beginning and talk about why employees were leaving and what they want, professional development and growth. really shows that an employer cares about us when they're invested in developing our skills and our professional growth, whatever those goals may be. So we want to establish some goals for that new employee and what they want to achieve, and really make the most of the opportunity to provide them with opportunities to develop and grow. And during that onboarding process, you're really going to encourage employee feedback, right? So that the employee can look back on that experience and say, gosh, I did get a clear outline of what my job description and responsibilities are. I do know what the company's mission and vision is. I know who my regular points of contact are. I was introduced to managers from every department. And as a result, I feel well prepared to succeed in my job. So again, Gallup, who does research on engaged employees, and one of the items that employees stated was that I know what the expectations are of my job, and I have the tools and resources I need in order to do my job. So not only are we setting clear expectations, but we're providing the tools and resources that that new employee needs to do their job. So as we wrap up, it's not easy out there. Like I said, we're all in this together, but it's not going to change anytime soon. The way we recruit, we're going to need to continue to be on it, to be timely, to be speedy. So we might want to think our recruiting process, our job descriptions, our job postings, how are we standing out from the others? Do we have a positive work culture to be able to brand ourselves as that and really attract new candidates? Focus on your current needs of your current employees in order to retain them. What resources, benefits, compensation, if any, flexibility can you offer? Use marketing, use whoever's creative to create those compelling job postings and offer those employer value propositions in the job posting. And I continue to see, as I go on LinkedIn and I'm looking at competitors for the companies that I'm hiring for that have just the most, boring job posting ever. And I'm like, gosh, how are they getting candidates? But they might not have attended this webinar. And then create that positive interview and onboarding process. And yes, you may get ghosted by candidates. You may have people not show up for interviews, but you got to persevere so that you can get to the truly top talent that you want and that you can retain that talent. Those are my tips of the trade. Again, if you have any positions that you want to share right now, go ahead and do it, because it really is about connecting with others in order to get those applicants coming in.
Keisha, I was just reminded, actually, as you were talking about recruiting and salaries, putting the salary ranges on, and I just looked it up. There is a new law that Governor Newsom, passed, and with 15 or more employees, the salary range will now need to be included, and that's going to start in January. So I can put that posting into the chat box as well. So great information. Thank you. Anybody have any other comments on what they're doing, what's successful, what's not successful, what some of the challenges are before we skate out of here today? Keisha has the codes for continuing education up on the screen right now. The HRCI code is 600950. Excuse me, and the SHRM code is 225. F is in Frank, P is in Paul, R is in Robert, T is in Tom. I'm going to put some stuff into the chat box for you. So Jason had talked earlier about a couple of other webinars that are coming up here. I'll put the registration pages in for you. There is a harassment prevention training that's coming up, and then there's also a labor law update that's going to be in February. So those are in the chat right now. I'm also going to put Jason's contact information along with your hotline. So please, again, use that hotline. We are here to serve you and to help you with any questions. It's free. You can call us as many times as you want. We are here to help you. Also, the last thing I'm going to do is put in where you can access the recording of this webinar. This was recorded and it will be on the Riverside County Workforce website. So I just put that in there as well. If you would be so kind to take a picture of this QR code that you see on your screen right now, that would be super helpful. It will take you over to our survey. It's 6 questions, I think. It'll take you less than 30 seconds. So we would love to get your feedback. And Keisha, I just saw one last question or comment in the chat box. It says, we've been very successful with our hiring events. They have been more effective than job fairs. That's awesome. So with all of that, that's a lot of information. Thank you so much, Keisha, for all your great wisdom and info. Thank you everybody for participating with us today. We always love to see everybody comments and that kind of stuff in the chat. It makes it much more fun for us. So have a great day, everybody. Take good care, stay healthy, enjoy this day, and we'll see you again very soon.
Take care, everyone.